Hello, this is Riel and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make a hot dog plushie bag, and I know it's a really extra idea and I don't even know if anyone would come searching for a tutorial, but here it is. So if you need a pattern, you'll find it in the description box below. Right now I'm trying to alter the pattern to become larger because my first trial was rather too small for it to become a bag. Right now I'm trying to cut out the new piece of brown fabric I need for the hot dog body. So this time I only marked the place where the dots are supposed to be and I didn't cut out the dots. Instead I sewed them together without cutting it open, so it would be more easier to control on the sewing machine. Because if you cut it open and you need to stretch open the neat based fabric, and then it will be really messy and hard to be accurate. So right now I'm trying to trace the lighter colored fabric after I sewn the brown one. And this is another tip that I found out after my first trial, is that if you try to sew the two pieces according to the same pattern, they won't match each other because the fabric stretches a lot while you sew. So yeah, pretty much most of the plushie fabrics around in the market will be knit based, so it does stretch a lot while you use a home sewing machine. So you will need to be careful of the stretchiness of the fabric. Right now I'm trying to pin everything because given that it's so stretchy, I know I'll definitely mess it up if I don't do it. So yeah, try to pin it as accurate as possible because it's still really difficult if you try to do it carefully. After you finish sewing the whole thing, remember to leave like 2 inches of the seam open because you need to insert the stuffing, and then you need to hand sew the 2 inches of seam by hand. And then yes, definitely the first trial is too small. And now I'm turning the finished sausage inside out. Again, leave 1 inch of seam open to insert the stuffing. Here I realized that my bread is far too wide. The length is correct, but it's far too wide because the white part would be showing far too much and it wouldn't resemble the hot dog that well. So I tried to cut open the two parts of the bread and then reduce the width by 2 inches on each side, and then I serged them together. So right now I tried to hand sew the open seam of the first half of the bread. You can see I already attached some of the leaves, but I will need to adjust that later. I just glued them on before, but we'll get to that part later. So yes, I'm trying to sew them together by hand along the spine of the thing because it will be easier to control by hand than on the machine. So later we'll cover up this ugly and very visible seam by adding a pocket flap on top of it, which will act as a kind of like a pocket for carrying around your phone, because I don't want this thing to lose its function as a bag. So right now flip to the other side and I'll attach the sausage. So by pinching them together, I realized the more you pinch together the two pieces of bread, actually it looks more like a real hot dog. But if it's spread open too wide, then it loses its resemblance. So again, I decided to do this by hand, and you need to do a lot of hand stitching through the bread and then through the sausage and to the other side of the bread. Back and forth in a zigzag motion. And yes, you can see how I painted on the mustard, but I don't really like it, so I decided to hide it on the inner side. And I'll try to figure out how to attach the mustard later. Sorry for being out of focus. So I'll try not to fast forward this part too much because it's really hard to explain verbally. I just might as well show you how to do it instead of describing it. And now basically the hot dog is finished. You can see the ugly seam on the back side, which we'll cover up later. And still I'm trying to pinch the hot dog and see if I can make it any more alike. So here I decided that the bread is spreading too far open, so I'll give it a facelift and try to see if I can sew the two pieces of bread more closely together in a smaller angle and see if it would look better. So I start the seam, the sewing at the side where it will be easier to hide the start of the thread, and then this time I'll try to sew like on the upper part of the side of the sausage and see if I can cinch it together. After I fix the angle of the bread, I now try to use the scrap pieces of the green plush fabric and stack them on and see if I still have enough to fake a lattice in the hot dog. So again, I used some jewelry glue to do this because they are the best type of glue I have around. So just cut out random shapes of lattice that has a wavy edge and then just stack them on and draw some leafy patterns on with your marker and it will be done. Now I'll try to figure out how to do the mustard part because I just figured out painting it on isn't a good idea because it looked too flat and it's hard to get the paint on the plushie fabric evenly because the plush has some, pile of fur and it's hard to get an even result. So I just bought a bright yellow shoelace and then I tried to pin the position and hand sew them onto the sausage. Again, try to hide the start of your thread at the side, and this time I discovered a gap between the bread which I can improve by just stitching them together so it will look more natural without too much of the gap showing. And remember to use extra amount of thread when you do this type of hand sewing because you don't want it to break apart too easily, and since it's a really 3D thing, so it's better to have more thread. Here I start attaching the shoelace to the sausage, and remember you can do this as invisibly as you could. So it's best if your stitches don't show on top of the shoelace. And I would suggest you to use yellow thread for this, and also remember to use extra thread. While I'm still stitching this on, let me quickly do a disclaimer. This is not a tutorial because I have never made a plush, and this is my first attempt, well, second attempt, and it isn't a perfect product, so I'm just improving along the process and see. I guess it will be fun to see someone struggling and trying on YouTube and not do things perfectly for change. Remember to do a few extra rounds around the end of the shoelace, as it will be subject to most abrasion, probably from wearing it. And I used some masking tape to tape the end of the shoelace to prevent it from unraveling, and I would later paint it with some yellow acrylic to cover up, the tape. This is the finished thing. So I already put in all the stuffing, and I attached the pocket flap, which would be big enough to hold hopefully a purse and an iPhone. And that's about all that I aim for. Leave me a comment if you know how to improve the process and have any future craftsy video ideas for me. Thank you for watching. See you next time.